Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms.
We're going to debate literature!
And discuss it.
Yes, we are. Very civilized.
If it's written work, it's game.
Or type.
Hi.
Let's meet the panel.
I'm Larry.
I'm Ari.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Josh.
And I'm Ari.
Ready?
Me too.
Today we're feeling a bit zany and out of the off of the beaten path, but it's a bit more of a serious holiday today because today is Veterans Day, which we're always thinking about those that served in any and every part of the armed forces,
And you have my thanks.
whether they are here, whether they're in another place, a better place.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that for our country.
Absolutely.
Major reason why we're here. We can do this as well. So today we're going to be going over a work of poetry from somebody who did not have the opportunity to see the end of war, but his legacy has lived on beyond it and is going to continue to live beyond that. And the poet is Wilfred Owen, and the poem is Dulce, Decorum Est.
Which is Latin, in case you know that.
It is Latin. It translates Dulce Decorum Est pro patria amore.
You read my notes.
Translates to
Your notes?
it is sweet and honorable to die for one's country. Unfortunately, as you're probably going to see in our discussion, Wilfred Owen did not necessarily think that way.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it has to do because he didn't have the same experience that everyone had after the war.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be more noticeable as we discuss it.
Already. And the discussion point that we're going to be talking about today, it's going to be a pretty broad question, and there's so much that can be said beyond that. That is, what kind of impression did you get about war, specifically trench warfare, after reading this poem? Charles.
Yes. I like to buy a vowel. I'm sorry. No. In all seriousness, it's when I first read it, and I read this many times, and I said, Dulce. And I know that's sweet. I know that, of course. And that's even before, because I know like 3 words in Latin. And 2 of them are not nice words, but Dulce is obviously sweet. And
Dulce leche, sweet milk candies.
There you go. So yeah. And then what was that other word that guy taught me? Anyway, okay, 90 years old, he was 90, and he winked at me. I don't want to go any further. If you personally, you want to go out and fight, which of course you always have our thanks and our gratitude. And personally, I don't think dying is sweet. Now, for the person who is no longer in trench warfare, to them, it's thank you, God. I was waiting for this, because trench warfare, we all know, was just ick. It was, and ick is not even a good word to use because it was.
They were in the smallest of.
It's basically you're in a sardine box.
I would say ick is an understatement.
Yeah.
The way that they had to crowd in there, it was just. And Owen does an outstanding job describing the gritty, muddy conditions. And it was just, it was almost as if they were unintentionally bumbling and clumsy in the way that they.
Well, I'm just clumsy in general, but still.
The way the clunky helmets.
Yes.
I
mean,
he wasn't just describing the physical conditions; he was also describing the mental conditions.
And I think that the physical also.
The physical
contributes to the mental.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the physical you can see in several different places. Like, he puts the gas.
Sorry.
There was something down here about putting on his helmet, and like there's just everything being blown out. Men march to sleep.
Gas, quick boys, and ecstasy of fumbling.
But there's also some
moments just in time.
Some mental stuff here, like for instance, this line right here, talking about his face and how it's devil sick of sin. You look at someone's face, and it's usually extremely easy to read, and he's reading it as if like he's seeing something that reminds him of that.
Is this the one? In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning.
No, I was talking about his hanging face like a devil sick of sin.
Mm. That's the whole impression of what war is really like. Are they really thinking about the end result, or are they just thinking about survival?
Or are they thinking at all?
Mm-hmm.
Is probably the more when you have all that happening at once, it's impossible to think properly.
It becomes instinct. It becomes that just
It's
the
second
idea
nature.
of
Second nature.
survival. Yeah.
You're,
That's the way it works.
and I don't speak from personal, but my grandfather, he was a medic in World War II, and I'm not going to go any further than that, but he came home from the war after his train being bombed and getting the honorable discharge, Purple Heart, and he would come home and he would just have a beer, and he did not want to talk about it at all. He said, "I don't want to talk about it." He lost full hearing in one ear and half in the other. He was also a drummer, my inspiration.
These kinds of things, these can cause severe mental problems like post-traumatic stress and shell shock. And
Do you guys think that he's alluding to the trauma of it when he talks about in my dreams? Like, do you think this is something that he has seen, and now that he has seen it, he sees it again and again and can't unsee?
Are we talking?
I think that
that sounds like
PTSD, which I think that he does allude to that, and I think that there are multiple people that end up in that particular, enduring that particular nature for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately for Owen, he did not live long enough to.
So this poem,
he did endure that throughout, but he never had the opportunity to have a post-military.
This poem,
which in that case, excuse me, I'm sorry, that would be that would be the sweet, because you don't have to experience that. You are taking up, or whatever your religion is, you're taking up, and I'm assuming your sins are already automatically forgiven because you're doing that. But I'm not going to, we're not going to turn this into a Bible lesson.
But it's that at that point. But is it really sweet and honorable? Which, in a way, it is. But
that's what I was saying earlier. If you truly love,
I don't think nobody on this panel has ever fought in war, so we have no idea what words can be used to describe the feeling of dying.
Like I said, what Charles said earlier is that ick would be an understatement.
It is,
yeah, right.
because ick is not even a word in the English language. It's something you would find on
onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
Good onomatopoeia that you're using.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what it is.
But it's like that line that you were reading earlier about the devil sick of sin. Like, I mean, that conjures up an image in me, it makes you, because you try to want to see it, and it just, I don't know,
I've seen it. I'm not gonna lie, and here's why. I want to, again, play in a Scottish pipe band, and we do a lot of, we'll say, events, for these soldiers who have come home, and some of them you can't even tell were in the war, because they just automatically, and they don't even let the post-traumatic, I don't know how. Of course, they're bending the elbow. Of course, they deserve it. I would say, hey, but I've been in too many situations. And of course, I've never served, so I take no credit, of course. But I'm saying I have seen, some people when we do Amazing Grace or Going Home, which is, you can look that up, Scottish bagpipes, Going Home, whatnot. I'm a drummer, so I don't have to play those things, and they're really, really expensive if you drop them. I'm not going to go any further. Charlie, hold my pipes. Sure. And that's the end of that discussion.
What I'm going to say about this poem is that
I think it's 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, well, no.
That's
To
what I want to
me,
say.
isn't that in reference to describing the quote unquote drowning man, the man who was being exposed to the gas? Is it?
Of course, I don't have
Yeah.
it with me.
I think it is.
I was saying this.
No.
This poem isn't. This poem is in, to me, is in 3 parts. The first part starts at bent double, ends at as under a green sea I saw him drowning. That's explaining what's happening as it's happening, like present tense kind of thing.
Okay.
The second part is this two-line segment here. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. This is the part Larry was talking about where it's like, you can't forget this. This is something that's always going to be burned into your memory and into your brain.
Hence
And then
the
the last part, from if in some smothering dreams till the end of the poem, this right here is basically saying, if for some reason this cleans itself up, and that I hope that you never have to be in the same experiences that I experienced earlier when I was in the beginning of the poem. So I think it's like a 3-step poem, 3-section poem.
It's pretty much in 3 stanzas.
Yeah, I can see it
except
in
for this
that,
couplet here.
yeah.
But
I can see it in that fashion, and the imagery is just.
And to remind people, the very last line is to remind people that
it's an old lie.
it is not, in fact, sweet and fitting to die for one's country, at least in Owen's opinion. People who have never been to war might look at it that way. He's trying to say from a perspective that he has already done it.
It's
So
like-
the fact that the experience outweighs speculation is basically what it is.
And not only that, war is not sweet, but also that this was the poison gas and the description of the effect that's having on the person that's suffering. Is very visceral, and like you can't die honorably that way. Like when you're actually puking up your insides and whatever he's
You're not
describing.
even-
and it's
You're not even
horrible.
thinking about a country. You're fortunate enough to even be thinking about
You just want to stop thinking
whether or
about
not this pain is going to end and
Yeah.
how it's going to end.
I have a friend whose grandfather was in World War II, I think it was. And what happened is that his grandfather had a friend. They were like best friends. Then they went off to war, went to 2 different places, and then when they got back, the other guy was so his mind was so far gone that he had forgotten who his grandfather was. And
It's like, Grandpa, you've changed. Get me a beer. Okay.
well, no. I mean, his grandfather's friend forgot who his grandfather was.
Yeah.
So it was really sad. Like that's what war can do to you, because it's like Josh said, it relies heavily on instinct and not necessarily on thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's usually
It's
what
flight
happens.
or it's flight or flight.
And the weaponry for World War
Oh, yeah.
One, and even more
I was gonna
for
get to that.
World War
Yeah,
Two
like-
up and coming. It was
Artillery barrages,
Yeah, it was-
creeping barrages, machine gun emplacements.
Yeah.
the gases,
Gas.
the bombs,
The M1 Garand rifle in World War One and World War Two holds 8 rounds. Today we have the M4. Like I said, I wanted to be. I don't know if I told you this, but I always wanted to be a police officer. Not going to happen, but I do know some of the tools they use, shall we say. And if they had that back then, we all know they didn't. But had they had that back then, this would have been over, I think. But the M1 Garand I heard was, and I've actually spoken to a POW, prisoner of war, and he said, yeah, my M1 jammed on me because I put the magazine. It only held 8 cartridges. And he said, when that thing's, that's why you see a lot of them going like this. Maybe if they do reenactments, because they're trying to clear that extra cartridge. That, of course, is probably still good, but it's so cruded up, it's not going to go through the barrel. And it's like, forget it. Now you move on to your whatever. You're lucky if you have a Colt 1911. Of course, this is now,
There's another line, or set of
And even
lines
that.
in here that are very descriptive. It goes, men marched to sleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the boots. To the hoops, excuse me. These are senses that we're talking about here. We're talking about blind, your sight. We're talking about deaf, your hearing, drunk with fatigue. Your ability to think is being impaired. This is basically explaining how, at least what Owen's trying to say here, is that doing this is the equivalent of just being a brain dead zombie with a gun, and that is an extremely strong way of looking at how war is. And if you think about it, everyone is a brain dead zombie with a gun.
And, of
And
course,
they're just shooting each other, who would want to live in that kind of world?
Exactly.
And you don't really have a clear idea as to the direct actions that are taking place. It's just all you know is you're just taking action to keeping yourself. Allowing you, or
alive.
the ability, the ability to function
You have to,
is
of course.
what he is getting at, and that's the feeling of war. You may not even realize later on some of the things that you've done.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
This Dulce, Decorum Est is definitely one of my favorite poems, not because it's a happy poem, but because it's a realistic poem and it's written extremely well. It's written so well. I want to just briefly mention this, that for Doctor Who fans out there was actually a video on YouTube. It's like the conversation that the 10th and 11th Doctor have when they're in the Tower of London in the 50th anniversary special, but instead of having John Hurt there, they had a clip of Christopher Eccleston reading this poem, and it fits perfectly. I'll probably send Josh the link so you guys can look at it. But it used the words in this poem, and it couldn't have fit any better. This is probably the poem that would have fit the best. I honestly think this poem is written extremely well. That's my...
I think that this is a turning point in when it comes to war poetry, because most of your...
This is like an experience poem.
Most of your noteworthy poems from previous wars, specifically the Civil War, glorify war. There's "Oh Captain, My Captain,"
drum taps. And I did an individual video on that.
Most of them are written by observers, and they are, and they celebrate the which most of what these people are doing are honorable, but what the participant has to say is always far more fascinating than what the observer has to say.
It's like the Olympics.
Even if the observer has some pretty wise thoughts, it's still the participant that has the most contribute.
Well, it's a good general rule of thumb. I think if you look carefully enough, you might find exceptions to that every so often.
Of course.
Yeah.
I did 2 papers, 2 major thesis papers on the that particular participant versus the observer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My drum taps individual video, which was my first one. I hope you liked it, and if you don't, please like it. Just kidding. Not. Please, really, it's fine.
No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
But
that's what I talked about. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but that's what I talked about. Drum taps and how the drumming was used as because the name of my paper was "The History and Role," of course, pun not intended, right? The history and role of drums, of the drum kit, or of the drum, and that was just a small line, not half the page. Not knocking anybody, but
so my absolute final thought is basically experience overrides speculation or observing, like Josh said. Because he has experience, this means a lot more than to someone who didn't have experience.
One time,
that's basically what life is all about.
Yeah.
I would just add that I think that this poem, what it tells me is it's a perfect example of using the medium of poetry to really hammer home, the thoughts and the imagery and all of the emotion of it. And I think that the reason why that is because it's so well crafted and everything like that. It's it's brilliantly written. Also, I don't think that it could have done. I don't think that the same message could have been conveyed any other way than the way that it was done here. And just like I was saying earlier about that imagery about the devil sick of sin and that kind of thing. Like if you think about that, if you try to come up with what would that look like? I mean, it's just it just makes horrific, like vague shadows. That don't even really do it justice, probably, but I don't think anything else could come.
That's the idea of war, and whether or not consistent killing of people, whether or not there is any justification to it, from the naturalistic point of view.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to read this in 27 lines than it would be to read in 270 pages.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say that it really...
You have the condensed version here, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still just...
And some of the words that Owen used are just...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's...
He does paint a picture, I could say that much.
It's not a pretty picture, but it's a picture.
There are multiple collections that include this particular poem, and there are Wilfred Owen poetry collections. The one that I have here that I'll refer to is the Mentor Book of Major British Poets. This includes poetry from William Blake to Dylan Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
But Wilfred Owen is quite remarkable with what he did through writing. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and thank you to everyone.
I was about to
that,
say thank you. And thank you is also...
Thank you for serving our country.
To those who are serving, who want to serve, who have served, and who have sacrificed themselves in order to keep us safe and keep us prosperous.
And remember, I know we're talking on Veterans Day here, but on Memorial Day, we don't... when you go out and have that barbecue, take some time aside and say, listen, have a little, of course, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
When you're, of course, we're talking complete opposite. Veterans Day and Memorial Day are two complete different things, but that's just my little side note. Have that,
I agree completely.
have that little service, have that little prayer service before. I can't sing, but yes.
Thank you for tuning in, and for now, keep reading.
Keep reading.